everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Wandering Road podcast. I'm your host, Chris, alongside my co host, Dean. And for today's show, we're going to be coming back to the topic of aliens, and this one includes remote viewing. And this topic in particular has been really popular on social media, and it's apparently some sort of SHMEIA document that was declassified where they talk about a remote viewer back on May 22nd, 1984, exploring Mars about a million years ago. What do you think about this one, Dean?
Perfect cover, man. SHMEIA, no one's ever going to know what we're talking about. It's great. Perfect.
A declassified document that's everywhere.
I know. So hopefully, so Chris was telling me beforehand, and I was like kind of apprehensive about talking about this. But what were you like, Chris? You're like, oh, it's declassified. Don't worry, everyone's talking about it. And I was like, well, tell that to the two unmarked SUVs that just pulled up.
To everyone listening to this episode all over the world.
I feel like knowing our luck is like we're gonna be everyone else is talking about, but it's like let's just fuck these guys over. But yeah, like I don't know, what do you want to do? How do you want to approach this? Do you want to read the synopsis or like the because it looks like the file itself that was just released and people are talking about it. It's essentially a breakdown between an interviewer and somebody who is supposedly remote viewing, and like you said, they're supposedly viewing Mars, a civilization on Mars about 1 million years ago. And I was thinking maybe we can just go through it doesn't seem like it's a long dialogue.
No, it's only about 7 pages. It's like very short sentences. Yeah, I'd be cool. Like we could just quickly go through it. But before we start that, what are your thoughts on remote viewing? Have you ever heard of that concept before?
I mean, there are so many great examples of it, and it's really fascinating. If there was ever a scientific overlay with like paranormal or creepy stuff, it could be remote viewing. We just talked about this recently on another recording, but I think there is more to the human mind and playing into the nature of existence. Like we've talked about this before, where we could be living in a simulation, or there could be some explanation as to why remote viewing works in some cases. And there are some very strange stories, but just the sheer fact that you have a sanctioned government agency and not just a US agency, I bet you any money if you did deep enough information or you search deep enough, you would find plenty of other countries pursuing this sort of thing. And it's not just remote viewing, it's like anything and everything to do with paranormal. So there must be some, there's some kind of credibility going on here. And I'll go into this later, but I do think that there are plenty of examples of misdirection and the effort of agencies to waste the resources of other agencies of other countries. This could very well be that, but in a nutshell, at the very least, this is a fascinating story, and I think that it's definitely one we can talk about in depth because it's going to be very, very just mind blowing to just imagine what's going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'll do now is like I have the PDF pulled up, so I'll just read from it. This is like a public document that you Google it, just Google like Mars 1984 type of thing, and it'll be like the first document that you can download. So I don't think there's any copyright involved in this.
No, fair use. It's out there.
Fair use. Yep. So cover our asses. Fair use. This is a public document. You find it on Google.
It's news.
It's news. I mean, technically, yeah. This took place on May 22nd, 1984. It's titled Mars Exploration. So the planet Mars, time of interest, approximately 1 million years BC. So the two, like you said earlier, there's an interviewer and then there's the remote viewer. So on the document, I guess MON, MON, is the interviewer, and sub, not a sub, is the remote viewer. The document starts, Mon, all right, now using the information in the envelope I've provided, exclusively focusing your attention now using the information in the envelope. Focus on 40.89 degrees north, 9.55 degrees west. Sub, I want to say it looks like, I don't know. It sort of looks like I kind of got an oblique view of a pyramid or a pyramid form. It's very high. It's kind of sitting in a large depressed area. Mon, all right. Sub. It's yellowish, ochre colored.
Oh, wait. I got an idea real quick.
Yeah.
We can keep going. We'll just keep going from here. But what if you played the Mon and I played the sub?
Oh, hell yeah. Let's do that.
Let's
You,
role play.
I mean, you always like being the sub anyway, according to your list.
Well, I like eating subs. I like eating stuff. Well, I like sub sandwiches, so I'll do the sub.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I'll start off with Mon. Move in time to the time indicated on the envelope. I provided you and describe what's happening.
Okay, you got to sell it more than that, man. You got to play Mister Deep Throat CIA. You got to go. All right, I need
All
you to
right.
move in.
Move in time to the indicated time on the envelope. I provided and described what's happening.
I'm tracking severe clouds. Okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm tracking severe clouds, more like dust. It's a dust storm. It's a geologic problem. It seems like there's just a minute. I've got to iron this out. It's really weird. By the way, just a
Don't
pause
sound
break.
like you're
We're reading
taking a
this.
crap.
I know, but listen, we're reading this, but I'm actually reading almost verbatim just to clarify. Okay, let's go forward.
Yes, we are reading verbatim. Mon, just report your raw perceptions at this time. You're still early in the session.
I'm looking at after an after effect of a major geological problem.
Okay, go back to the time before the geological problem.
Total difference. It's before there's no I don't know. Oh hell, it's like mountains of dirt. They appear to disappear when you go before them. I see large flat surfaces, very smooth angles, walls. They're really large though. I mean, they're megalithic.
All right, at this period in time now before the geological activity, look around in and around this area and see if you can find any activity.
I'm seeing it's like a perception of a shadow of people, very tall, very thin people. It's but they're just shadows. I can't see any faces. It's as if they were there and they're not. They're somehow there and not there at the same time.
Go back to a period of time where they are there. And this guy sounds like
Okay.
an asshole.
Yeah. You are an asshole. I wanted coffee, not tea. It it's like I got a lot of static on the line and everything. It's crackling. It's breaking up. I feel like I'm gonna okay. Pause break. I feel like at this point the sub is just like going on, and this is where like I feel like the mom would be like, "Get the fuck out of here! You're just." I see things. I don't see things. It's okay. Pick it up.
Just report the raw data. Don't try to put things together. Just report the raw data.
What did I tell you? I just I just keep seeing very large people. They appear thin, tall, but they're very large. They're wearing some kind of strange clothes.
All right. Now holding in this time period. Holding in this time period. I want to move from your I want you to move from your physical location in space to another physical location, but in this time period. Move now to 46.45 north, 353.22 east. Move in this time to 46.45 north, 353.22 east.
Deep inside a cavern. I'm deep inside a cavern now, more like a canyon, actually. I'm looking up. There's sides of the steep wall. I can see that they seem to go on forever. I'm so deep. And there's like a structure with it's like a wall of a canyon, but it's carved though. It's made by somebody else. It's not natural. Again, I'm looking at a very large structure, intricacies, huge sections of smooth stone.
Do the structures have insides and outsides?
Yes, they're very it's like a rabbit warren, corners of rooms. They're really huge. I don't know. I feel like I'm standing in one of it's just huge here. It's imperceivable. The walls are so high and they're so wide that I can't get a good sense.
Yes, that would be correct. All right. I'd like to move now to another location nearby. All right. Move from this point in this time to 45.86 north, 354.1 east. 45.86 north, 354.1 east.
They have it appears to be the end of a very large road and there's a marker, some kind of marker. It's very large. Um, I keep getting it mixed up with the Washington Monument overlay. It's so similar. It's an obelisk.
All right. From this point, then, let us move to another point. Move now to 35.26 north, 213.24 east. Move in this time to 35.26 north, 213.24 east.
It's like I'm in the middle of a huge circular basin, like a huge bowl. There's a range of mountains. They're almost all the way around. They're very ragged mountains everywhere. They're tall, they're thin. The basin is very large, so big that I can't even imagine giving a good explanation of how big they are. The scale seems to be off, though. It's just really big.
I understand the problem. Just continue.
See, just a right angle corner, something. It's a right angle corner of something. I don't see anything else though.
Okay, then let's move into a little different place. Very close. Move from the point you are now in this time to 34.6 north, 213.09 east. Move now in this time to 34.6 north, 213.09 east.
The cluster of squares up and down. It's like you want to make them square anyway. They're not quite square, but your brain wants to make them like that. They're almost flush with the ground, and it's like they're connected. Something very white is reflecting off of the light.
What's your position of observation as you look at this thing that reflects light?
I'm amid and the same thing, an obelisk, left angle obelisk. The sun. It's weird.
Look back down at the ground, and we're going to move just a little bit past this place, just a little bit from this place. 34.57 north, 212.22 east. Very close by. Now move over to 34.57 north, 212.22 east.
It's like I can just perceive like a radiating pattern of some kind. It's like some really strange intersecting kind of roads that are dug. They're dug into valleys, like a road or just something along the edge that can be traveled on.
Tell me about the shapes of these things.
They're like real neat channel cuts. They're very deep, and it's like the road just went down from there.
Now I notice electrically you're nulled out a little bit, and I want you to stay deep and recapture your focus here.
Oh, it's really tough. It seems like it's just always very sporadic and hard to hold on to.
I realize that it's very important that you maintain your focus. I have a movement exercise again for you, and this is some considerable distance away. So, holding the focus in time. Remember the focus in time that you had before, and moving now to 15 degrees north, 198 degrees east. Take some time and get back deep.
Whatever these things are, it's an aqueduct. It has to be an aqueduct of some kind. These rounded bottom carved channels like road beds, but they're not for traveling. They have to be for water or some liquid. There's points at the tops, and there's something on the horizon. But even the horizon looks funny and weird. It's like different, misty, but it's really far away. It's vague to make out because it's so far and hazy.
You mind if we jump around a little bit? Let's
What about the
see.
part where different chambers, they're almost striped furnishing. There's furnishings.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, listeners. So we're going to jump ahead a little bit in the section of the document where the interviewer and the remote viewer are talking about these shelters, these chambers.
I see different chambers, but they're almost stripped of any kind of furnishings or anything. It's like it's strictly for function. It's almost like it's just for sleeping, or maybe that's not even a good word. It's for hibernating, some kind of hibernation. I can't get real raw inputs though. The storms, there's savage storms all around, and sleeping through the storms. I guess that's whatever these things do here.
Okay, tell me about the ones who sleep through the storms.
They're very tall, very tall, large people. They're very thin. They look thin because their height and their dress is oh hell, it's like a real light silk. It's making them look so tall and thin, but it's not a flowing type of cloth. It's like it almost like it's snug to fit, cut to fit them somehow.
Move close to one of them and ask them to tell you about themselves.
They're ancient. They're very ancient people. But they're dying. It's past their time or their age.
Tell me about this.
They're very philosophic about it. They're very reflective. They're looking for they're just looking for a way to survive this time. They can't seem to get their way out. They can't seem to find their way out. They're just hanging on while they look or wait for something to return or something to come with the answer.
What is it they're waiting for?
There was a group, a party, a lot of them that went out to find a new place to live. It's like I'm getting all kinds of overwhelming input. All of the there was corruption of their environment somehow. It's failing very rapidly. And this group, they went somewhere like a long way to find another place to live.
What was the cause of the atmospheric disturbance or environmental disturbance?
I see a picture of it's a picture of like oh hell. It's almost a warp in oh god, this is difficult. It's like going
The raw data.
oh okay, I get a globe. It's like a globe that goes through the comet's tail, or it's through a river of something, but it's all very cosmic. It's like space pictures.
All right. Now, before you leave this individual, ask him if there is any way that you ask him if he knows who you are, and is there any way you can help him in his present predicament?
All I'm getting is that they must just wait. They have to wait. They don't know who I am. Think he perceives me. I'm a hallucination. I think he thinks I'm a hallucination.
Okay. When the others left, these people are waiting. When the others left, how did they go?
I get an impression of I don't know what the hell it is. It looks like the inside of a large boat, a very large boat, very rounded walls, shiny metal.
Go along with them on their journey and find out where it is they go.
Impression of it's an impression of a really crazy place with volcanoes and gas pockets and strange plants and very volatile place. It's very much like going from a frying pan into the fire. The difference is that there seems to be a lot of vegetation where the other place didn't have it. But there's a different kind of storm here. It's like fire.
All right, it's time to come back now to the sound of my voice into present time to right now, the 22nd of May, 1984. The sound of my voice. Move now back to the room, back to the sound of my voice, back further now to the sound of my voice on the 22nd of May, 1984. And that's the end of the interview.
And scene.
And scene.
Ah, where's our Oscar? We nailed it. Oh, come
Yeah,
on.
this
Somebody
interviewer
hire
was
us.
was kind of an asshole. Listeners,
Holy
we
shit.
did skip around a little bit to get to more of like the more interesting type of stuff. But what a document, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not long, but it's very, very interesting. So essentially the gist of it is that a million years ago, there was apparently this civilization on Mars that was probably an advanced civilization. Apparently, they were very tall and thin, type of, I don't know, humanoids, sounds like. And
Mhm.
there was some sort of geological disaster that caused their environment to go haywire. And one thing we know about Mars, it lost its magnetic field, right?
Yep.
I think the core of it cooled off and therefore it lost its magnetic field. And if you don't have a magnetic field, like everything's pretty much going to fucking die.
Yeah, dude, there's just so much to unpack here. I am so much more infatuated with this now reading it like that because I don't know, there's something fun about doing the back and forth, but it really got my mind running as I was like trying to play this role. The first thing I want to unpack really quickly, it like you were saying, is I see what this document is getting, or the person who's remote viewing. I mean, the implication or what seems to be implied here is that this race of million-year-old alienoid tall things or whatever, like they were looking for a new home and they probably found it here on Earth. I think that they're trying to get this idea that the aliens came here from Mars to restart their civilization somehow. But here's one thing I'll say before, because there's so much to unpack, but I want to give it back to you after this, get your perspective. Here's what I'm thinking. So clearly this race of beings on Mars, if this sub person is actually seeing this stuff, they are much more technologically advanced than we are because they have at least interplanetary travel. which we have now, but we can't go to multiple planets. We can't travel throughout our solar system easily and freely. It sounds like this civilization did have that. However, they clearly didn't have the means to retromorph or like fix their environment. So to me, that either says one of two things. Either the first one is it happened so quickly and so randomly, like you said, maybe, something shifted that they just couldn't respond to it. But in my mind, I think that if you had an advanced civilization, they probably would know enough about their planet to see it coming and forecast it. Clearly, they didn't have enough to like save themselves, but they did have enough knowledge and wherewithal and experience and all that stuff to go look for other places to survive. So that's the first thing I get from this.
No, that makes sense, dude. And I think any type of civilization would have difficulty mass transporting everyone
Yeah.
to another location to save themselves. Because it sounds like if this is true and the remote viewer is being genuine and it's just not made up stuff, that dude that was in that room or whatever sounded like he wasn't going to be saved at all. It sounded like a lot of folks over there were dying with the planet.
Yeah, exactly. And there was that one part where the interviewer asked the sub to interact with this being that he was remote viewing too, which is interesting too, right? Because if you're thinking about time and space, this is happening in the past, but this person who is remote viewing is it sounds like he's actually there and he's actually being seen and interacted with by these creatures or these aliens. And there was even a point where the sub said, "Oh, he sees me, but he thinks I'm a hallucination." That's can you imagine that? Like, imagine your civilization's falling apart, and you suddenly see a humanoid creature. That the first thing I would think if I was a dying race and I saw a small, tiny humanoid creature pop up in front of me that was kind of like me, but not definitely not me, I would be like, "Oh, maybe we did find a way to survive, and this is them coming back to the future to say, yeah, we did it." Getting maybe a little bit too science fictiony, but here is an interesting fact about this paper. Whoever the interviewer was, he had insider knowledge, some kind of insight or information that was already prepared before the sub had tried to remote view. And the first thing that we can point to of that concept is the fact that he had coordinates. And right now, I'm going to toss it back to you. But as you're talking or responding to that, I'm going to do a quick search and see because these don't really seem like real coordinates. Like if you have coordinates on Earth, you've got a long string of like, east, northeast, and like south. Where like there's two different sets of coordinates and they're very, very specific. But these are small numbers: 46.45 north and 35322 east. That seems like a really wide area because you're truncating it down to a small number.
No, that is a good point. It did seem like, and I'm glad you picked that up because I didn't pick it up while we were reading it. And when I read it previously to this episode, that it sounded like the interviewer kind of had an idea of what was going on. So I wonder if this document that was declassified is one of many instances in which this interviewer had folks doing remote viewing sessions to the planet Mars.
I think that the fact too that the sub is talking about these structures, I guess a million years is an awfully long time to go by, but some of these structures and caverns and stuff, they seem, I guess they could be underground, but at the same time, it almost sounds like at some points he's describing a horizon. So he seems like he's outside at this point when he's remote viewing. And I would venture a guess that it would be extremely hard. And like I said, unless the entire atmosphere and planetary, like geological makeup changed, I think that it would be unlikely that these monolithic structures would be hidden for very long from us. So maybe that's why it's leaking. Like maybe sometime when we get to like eventually we're going to get to Mars and we're going to see they're trying to, they're prepping the stage for us to discover something crazy on Mars. That's what I would guess if this was real.
Just to be a smartass. I know not a lot of people like ChatGPT. I personally like ChatGPT just to I just ask it the dumbest like what if prompts. The other night I was like so bored. I was what if Titus Labienus didn't join the side of Pompey during the Civil War? And it gave me this entire what if scenario if Labienus stuck with Caesar and every potential outcome of how whatever the war would have turned out and it would have ended up, ended faster. But I just typed in, would it be possible for Mars to have life over 1 million years ago? And it spits back out, yes, it is scientifically plausible that Mars could have harbored life a million years ago, though this would depend on certain conditions existing at the time. Here are the key points: ancient water evidence, thicker atmosphere in the past, organic molecules detected, which apparently NASA's Curiosity rover has detected organic molecules on Mars, which are the building blocks of life. I mean, it doesn't prove that life existed, but there's a start. It spits out some challenges to life on Mars a million years ago. Climate shift, which seems to be happening in that remote viewing session, radiation, geological inactivity. And apparently, Mars has been geologically inactive for billions of years. So that could affect, whatever life could have potentially been on Mars at the time.
Yeah, and here's another interesting fact too to add on to that. I was saying earlier, and I didn't think about this until now. So I originally was assuming that whoever was doing this viewing or whatever reason this document existed, they were implying that this race of beings from Mars came to Mars form Earth. I mean, it's not terraform, like, but like coming to Earth to basically make it their new planet. This sub was viewing was a planet that was like on fire. So I don't know. Let's if you give credibility to the remote viewer, let's say he was really seeing all this stuff. I don't think it would have been planet Earth, right? Because I mean, unless he fudged the time somehow. I mean, I just assume that like whatever he's seeing and the conclusions he's drawing, like I don't even know where he got a million years from. It's not like he just showed up and saw an alien calendar and was somehow able to figure out that it was a million years ago. Like I don't know
No,
where
no,
that
no.
came
They
from.
told them specifically to look back a million years at the beginning.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. What I meant to say was there's no way for the guy to know that he was actually viewing a million years ago. Like there's no clarification for certainty on the time frame. So, and the reason I bring it up is because a million years ago, if this race was looking for a different planet to survive on, then it wasn't Earth that was on fire because all the volcanic activity that was happening on Earth and stuff, like unless he was looking at a very specific part of Earth, I mean, I still think that there was a lot of life. He did mention, there was a lot of different foliage and stuff. So I guess it could have been Earth a million years ago, but the way he described things being on fire was like very volcanic. And I don't know. So it's either Earth or it's somewhere else, like really far away, or this reviewer guy like didn't have enough knowledge to know about what Earth was like a million years ago, and he was just like kind of fudging it.
And that's also within the realm of possibility that the dude was, or whoever was doing it, was kind of bullshitting.
Hmm.
I mean, that's always within the realm of possibility. But I just find this thing so interesting because the remote viewing itself, it's it's not like it's exclusive to this type of
Oh yeah,
this document. It's
right.
something that, whether you believe it's possible or not, that people claim it to be true. And that's how they find particular things. You know what's crazy? I was watching this YouTuber. He was talking about remote viewing, and he was talking about how he was being harassed by this person who was a remote viewer. He would text him, the remote viewer would like message him whenever he was doing something. So he'd be like, he'd get a message and it would say, I know you're lifting weights at the gym right now. And the dude would actually be at the gym. And apparently this person was not on the same, not in the same country, not on the same continent. Take it with a grain of salt, I would say. But it's something that I just find very interesting. There was this one clip from a podcast that I saw. I forget the name of it, but it was this remote viewer, Angela Ford, who apparently worked as a remote viewer in the CIA's Project Stargate and other Cold War era programs. What I found interesting with this specific clip, he asks her, did you remote view the crucifixion? And if you're good at reading people, She had this look on her face of like, 1, I can't believe you asked me that. 2, she had the look on her face of like, yeah, I did see it, and I don't want to answer. She just looked like shook when she was asked that question. When you have someone that was a remote viewer for the three-letter agency back in the day, because she is older. I don't know. What do you make of that, man? This lady wouldn't shut up for like hours for however long the podcast was going on for. And then he asked that specific question, and it's like she's like scared to death to answer it. But what are your thoughts on that and just like people like her that claim to remote view?
I think that I don't know. I don't want to step on any toes. I think that if someone is open to talking about that sort of thing and they talk about all kinds of things for an hour, like an hour and a half or whatever, and then suddenly a question is asked and that like tightens their lip, I think that that is odd. I wouldn't necessarily give 100% credibility to the idea that she somehow decided that that was too sensitive. Like if you're going on about a secret project or like you're going on about something that has a lot of sensitivity to it, and then you get tripped up on one question, like, I don't know, that's a little bit of a I'd have to listen to it. Maybe I will go back and listen to that whole thing and just because 'cause I'm curious now, but one thing that I wanna mention too before we dig any further into that is Project Stargate is really, really fascinating. I guess it was initially codenamed Grill Flame, and, I think later it was something else, but, it started in the '70s. So, like, we've known about Project Stargate for a long time, and I think what's really interesting too is
It
that
is a
Stargate is also
Foggate. Do you
it is
want
a
to get
Fargate.
sued?
I was just gonna say that, like, clearly the show, the creators of the movie, those 2 guys we've talked about before, I can't remember their names, but they're the creators of the movie Stargate that got spun off into a syndicated series in the series that was like the other series. So basically this like, if you don't know what Stargate is, it's just massive, like, 1990s phenomena. It was a movie. I thought it was a really good movie, and that it caught some flack, but then after that, they came out with a series that ran for like well, Stargate SG-1 ran for like, God, I don't even know, like 9, 10 years, I think. And then there was a spinoff that was like, I think it was Atlantis. And then after Atlantis, they did some other ones, and I think it's done now, but like it's been on forever. So Stargate it's interesting that it was named that because and I'm not talking about the movie or the show, I'm talking about the actual project in the government. Stargate is a fascinating name for a project. And you think about the implications of what it means. Like you're trying to not only figure out if humans have the capability to remote view in and around their area and time, but also having the ability to go to multiple star systems at different times in the universe's existence. And it sounds like based off of this document, like, that's what they're trying to show credibility of it. Like, well, we did at least have some people who were able to manifest or create the situation in which they could travel not only vast distances, but also vast times. And possibly not even in the past. Like, I don't know that we should like look into that, but I wonder if there's a lot of remote viewing instances of the future. Maybe you can't remote view in the future, but that I guess that would just be called clairvoyance, right? So that's another crossover for another day. But the other fascinating part of this, which ties back into the woman you were just talking about, who was supposedly a remote viewer for Project Stargate. The project was initially handled by the CIA, but then later, I think it was based off of my research, it was passed off to the DoD. So that's an interesting aspect too. Is like you go from a 3-letter agency that is a federal agency, and then you go to the Department of Defense for its managing. And then I can't even imagine at that point, like maybe that had to do with the funding and getting additional funding or trying to obfuscate, what the actual operation was doing. Who knows? But what's fascinating to me is that it was terminated in 1995. So that is a long time, 25 years to be doing this, and maybe even longer. I'm sure that, like, there's not a lot of certain information that was released around different periods that rounded out the '70s up to the 1995 period. There who knows, it could have been renamed, rebranded. It's just this specific project was ended. So when I think back to that woman that you were talking about who, got tight-lipped all of a sudden, it makes me wonder if she was part of the leak cycle. She was maybe coached on what she could say and couldn't say. And the explanation for her to become tight-lipped might have been a situation she found herself in where like, okay, I can say these things, but then she wasn't expecting the interviewer to have that piece of information. So when he caught her off guard, asking that specific question that really tripped her up, that could be an indication of why she stopped because she suddenly realized, oh, this is he has too much information that I'm not supposed to be sharing.
No, that's fair. And I think when you talk about an incident like that, where he asked that question, "Did you go see the crucifixion?" It's a very tight rope to
Yeah.
walk across because there's 2 answers. Yes, it happened. No, it didn't happen. And either way, I don't think that'll put her in a good position as a remote viewer. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess it could
If
have been a
if
personal thing
if
too.
it's true, if
Right.
she has that ability. So I'm as much as I want this to be real, I'd find this awesome in the sense that holy crap, there was another civilization in our solar system on our neighboring planet. That's freaking awesome. At the same time, it's like, well, that's awesome, but it's really fucking shitty the way that they went out.
Anything in the universe can't last forever. I do wonder that too. Like I wonder how old the civilization was if it actually did exist. If I can flip back to before I forget, there's one other aspect to this document that we read that really stood out to me as I was reading it. And I'm going to read two excerpts before I talk about it. So the first one is it was a question or it was a statement that was posed by the interviewer Mon, and this is the portion that he says for I'll say this one then the next one. So he says, "Okay, now I have noticed electrically you're nulled out a little bit, and I want you to stay deep and recapture your focus here. Okay, so keep that in mind." He said, "I noticed you're electrically nulled out a little bit. I want you to stay focused." And then if you go down, the second part that ties in similarly, there was an action that was done by Mon. It wasn't a statement, it was an action. And we didn't actually I don't think we read it, but if you go down to page second to the last page, in parentheses, it says plus 40 minutes, definite voltage reversal. And then there's an asterisk. And then the asterisk at the bottom says this indicates monitor comment recording, but not heard by the subject. So Mon recorded this change. And there you have two statements of some kind of electrical current or some kind of system that was being run simultaneously while the remote viewer was doing this. And that's not the idea, the impression I get whenever you see, like, if you watch the hilarious, like, the movie, I love this movie, it's really funny, but The Men Who Stare at Goats, it's, George Clooney, and I forget who else is in it, but, like, it's basically a comedy about the real life event where the military was trying to do this sort of thing like remote viewing and trying to be clairvoyant, and they were trying to do this in order to get one up on the Soviets or just basically have that capability in the military. When you see that movie, when they're doing these things, and even when you're like looking into this remote viewing thing in the government and stuff, you get the idea, or like you see it portrayed that they're just sitting at a desk with their hands crossed and they're just staring, or they have their eyes closed, like they're just at a table, it's just by themselves. But here you have a document that's talking about some kind of system, some kind of electrical current that's I imagine, it's helping the person. It's supposed to help the person to reach a different state or a frequency or something as they're trying to tap into this deep down structure in the universe that allows them to travel and view. And that's interesting, right? Like how did they even come about? Just like we were saying earlier, like where did the interviewer get this knowledge about this civilization and to go a million years ago to remote view and this race and all that stuff? Like it seems like they already had this information at least somewhat, and they're trying to get clarification from the remote viewer. So the fact that they have some kind of system that seems to hone in and amplify the remote viewer's ability, that to me says like they've been doing this for a long time, and they must have an ability to do this even more so than they used to. And this is even in 1984. So who knows how far they got in, another 15 years after that.
No, that's a good point. And I mean, the first images of Mars that we got was like back from the 60s, I think, like the mid 60s and like 64 or
Yeah.
65.
But even
And
then it was
then,
granular, right? It wasn't very clear.
no, it wasn't very clear. I think it was very granular. You remember when those images came out with, like, the pyramid and the carved
Yeah.
face on Mars
Mm.
back in the mid-90s? I don't know when that picture actually came like, NASA actually took that picture, but it's very interesting to me. And, you brought up something about the interviewer having prior knowledge to what was going on. I mean, one, it could have been a possibility that this isn't their first interview that they did with a remote viewer going to this location and this time period, because you could pick a location, I guess, hypothetically. And if anyone is a remote viewer listening to this, I'm not trying to piss anyone off. I'm not, not trying to be a dick. Hypothetically, if this is a possibility, I mean, you could tell someone, look 1 million years in the past in this exact location that you're standing in. And hypothetically, if remote viewing is true, that could be a possibility. Now, with the images of Mars that they have, even though they're granular, and you're talking about, the 80s, the 70s, who knows how many photos they actually do have that were not released for public consumption. I mean, it's kind of like we do with our show, right? We have certain episodes that we release in a specific manner for public consumption, right? Like every show does that. So I don't see that being different from like NASA or some of these like agencies that have these pictures that want to tell a story to the public based off of what they release. So basically what I'm trying to get at is that this interviewer could have had prior knowledge to this because this isn't their first rodeo with the remote viewing session. And that person might have viewed some catastrophic event on Mars, and it is within the realm of possibility that they saw the extinction of a civilization and them leaving Mars to come to another planet. Now, is it trying to say that the origins of humanity is from Mars? I don't really buy that because, like, the first hominids, I would say, showed up on the planet 2.8 million years ago. And if an advanced civilization left another planet, came to our planet, why would they start over in the fucking Stone Age? You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm not trying to put a permanent tinfoil hat on, but I think it is fun to think about that. All these sightings that people have been seeing of creatures and or like aliens or whatever. We just talked about the ones that supposedly have been seen going in and out of the oceans. There's two theories here. So I guess the first one is in line with what we're talking about. So the first theory is that aliens came from nearby and they inhabited our planet a million years ago and they were separate from us, but maybe they had some kind of influence, like, the progression of life and all that stuff. It's theoretically possible if they had the right technology and the intricacies to calculate the formation of amoeba, like, all that, the growth and all that stuff, possible. But the idea that they could still be here and not be part of our civilization is one that obviously people have been talking about for a while. But the other side of that is that maybe the fact that they are here, or if they are here as themselves, they're existing separately, they could be us from the future, or some other part of our timeline. And the reason why I bring that up is because, and I've said this before, I'll say it again, and I know there's some people who disagree with me. I think it's hard to refute the scientific nature that we have today based off of this, but human beings, the way we evolved, like bipedal, two eyes, a nose, blah blah blah, all that's everything we have that makes us structurally the way we are. It's so unlikely, so unlikely that another race of intelligent beings would exist that looks similar to us in the same way that this person who remote viewed supposedly saw these big, tall humanoid creatures that had two arms, two legs, a head, two eyes, etc. They just looked, they looked different from us in the sense that they were super tall and they were skinny. I don't know, like what's the play off of that, right? Like, so if there was a civilization that looked like us on Mars and they came here, then it seems probable that they would have had to have some kind of direct impact on our formation as a species because we look so much like them physiologically. Not in the sense that we're super tall and skinny and all this, but like we have the same set of organs and limbs and stuff that they do. And I don't know, I can never let that idea go that we only ever see aliens that look similar to us.
I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, my final thought, and I'll give you the last word before we wrap up this show. Because I feel like this topic, you can, if you go too long, you can be redundant. So I personally think that, fuck it. I'm going to go the tinfoil hat route. I think that remote viewing is real, astral projection is real. People can do that. There's a lot we can do with our minds. And there is a possibility that this was true. This person remote viewed to a certain area in the past, and maybe there was a civilization on Mars. Maybe there was life on Mars and something went catastrophically wrong because I believe Mars has no magnetic field. It's not like volcanically active. There's like no activity. I believe the core is like it's not a molten core like we have on our Earth. So who knows? What's your final word on this, man? Do you believe it or you think it's a little bit of BS?
I like to think that it's something that's possible. I mean, it's fun to theorize, and to me, honestly, it makes life a little less scary, maybe, or maybe I'm just not thinking too deeply about it. What's interesting is like you have this idea that there are all kinds of different ways that life can manifest throughout the universe, and that to me, it makes things better for me mentally because it seems like less scary in a way that, oh yeah, like, time and space and we're all part of this intricate fabric of the universe and we're just taking part of this shared experience that those beings that have, self-awareness and all that stuff and consciousness, like we all share that same thing, even if the aliens are like eons past our thinking capacity. It kind of makes things interesting. So yes, I hope, maybe I hope that there's some semblance of truth to it, but at the same time, I know like governments and agencies, especially during the Cold War era, would fuck with the other one, each other to waste resources. We talked about one not long ago where wasn't there like some submarine or something, like there was something I was just trying to research. I can't find it again, but there was some kind of operation by the US to basically make the Soviet Union think that they had some clairvoyant capability to figure out where a sub was or something to do with a ship or something like that. And they faked the documents and they were intercepted, and they seemed like they were intercepted on the Soviet side surreptitiously, like they actually captured them, when in reality they were being like leaked and coached from the agency, or like the US side. And it ended up getting the Soviet Union to waste like a shit ton of resources trying to study the same thing or get the same results. So, I mean, essentially, like it's the same thing. Like this document could just be a fake, a fabrication, but who knows, man? I love talking about it.
Same here. And listeners, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Shoot us an email if you think this is legitimate or if it's all BS. Thanks for tuning into today's episode of The Wandering Road. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, and most podcast platforms. Be sure to subscribe and share. Also, don't forget to give a follow on Instagram at twroadpodcast and follow my TikTok at twrpodcast. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.